We're going to cover a little bit of agenda today. Here is all things that we're going to touch on. We're starting with what to expect as a Microsoft Live event. There's some code of conduct type of things that we need to show you. And then we're going to introduce you to everybody on the team. We're then going to do open questions and answers. We have a couple questions that we prepared to kind of prompt the audience if there's a cold start. And then we're going to close out with a beautiful day, 7:30 in Seattle, where it's raining outside. Nicola, you want to take over this? I need to connect with you these real quick.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me switch over here. Sound live. So hi, everybody. So before we get started, a couple little rules of engagement. Use the chat box that's on your right side to send us any questions, anything you want to talk about. We're here to talk about the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, but if you have any questions about life and the universe, we'll try our best. We're not that great at that stuff though. So Microsoft Graph Toolkit usually is kind of area of expertise. When you sign in, you can either be anonymous or you can tell us your name. My name is Nicola. And then once we get the questions here in our kind of queue moderation, we'll take a look at them and we'll publish them, and then we'll answer them live. One of us will answer them. And then if you like a question, just instead of reposting it or +1ing it, you can just simply liking it, and that way we can see the popularity and we can see which questions we should answer first. And then we'll talk, we won't type it in, we'll actually talk live and kind of answer and try to interact with you. So just a reminder, this session will be recorded. I believe also the questions, as you send them, they will be recorded, especially because we'll be talking about those questions. And just, let's stay on topic as much as we can. And then make sure to adhere to the Microsoft Code of Conduct, which is right here. I don't know if we should go through this whole thing because it's a big wall of text. But if you want to know more about the Microsoft Code Contact, you can go on Bing and search Microsoft Code Contact, and you'll find this exact same thing. But it's just the usual stuff that you know. Anyway, who are we? Well, we are one of the best teams at Microsoft, honestly. It'll be hard to find a better team than this one that's right here in front of you.
I agree.
And I'll let us introduce us in order. So Beth, maybe you should go first.
Oh, you changed the orders. I was supposed to be second.
Hey, I just want to be alphabetical.
My name's Beth. I work with Nicola, Shane, and Elise, and he is right. I think we are the best team in this company. We work on Microsoft Graph Toolkit. We're going to get into a little bit. I see someone already asked, giving a quick overview of the toolkit. We're going to do that right after this intro session. Software engineer, I like coding and all kinds of other things, including bacon right here.
Who doesn't like bacon?
It's good for your soul.
There's all kinds of bacon. There's turkey bacon, there's vegan bacon, there's all kinds of bacon.
So really looking forward to connect with you guys, the community, and getting the proper feedback for us and help us get the toolkit to be better.
Thank you, Beth. And let's go to Elise. Elise, do you want to can Elise actually introduce herself? So can she hear it?
Yeah, hold on one second. I just need to share my screen real quick.
Okay, so we're doing some kind of magic back here because it was too late. We forgot to include Elise into this presenter mode, so we're doing some magic over Skype.
She's on there.
Can people see and hear me?
Yeah, you're live.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Elise. I am a PM on the Microsoft Graph team, and I work on the toolkit as well. And I'm making a surprise guest appearance in this session. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what questions you have on the toolkit.
Awesome. And then I'll go next. Hi, everybody. I'm Nicola. I am also a software engineer on the same team as Beth and Shane and Elise, working on the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. And I'm very excited to hear from all your questions, get your feedback, suggestions, or whatever you want to talk about regarding Graph Toolkit or anything you want to talk about.
Shane.
Hey, that's me next. Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good night. My name's Shane Weaver. I work on the Toolkit team with these guys and gals. And yeah, I love creating UX and working on web components, and Toolkit's pretty fun. I recommend you check it out and maybe contribute.
Cool. Nicola, back to you for content sharing.
Let me share the screen again. There it is. Let's try this. Send live. Okay.
Oh, I'm on it. Here's all the things you can ask us about, anything and everything about Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and almost anything on the graph. We'll try our best to answer your questions regarding Graph, just because there are so many different workloads on it. No guarantee that we would know everything, especially there's a lot of new announcements coming out these past 2 days as well.
That's right. So I think we can kick it off now, right?
Yeah.
That's all the deck that I have.
Yes. I think we could start with, somebody already asked in the audience that says, can you just give a quick overview of the Graph Toolkit? Yes, of course. I'm just going to go start by myself since I'm already on the screen anyways, but yep. I'm sure everybody on the teams know all of these things as I do. So Graph Toolkit is a web component library. It is reusable. It's very modular. We built this to help people build their applications faster to connect to the Microsoft Graph. It works with any framework that you have set up in your project, naming a couple, React, Angular, Vue, anything that you want to use with the components is fine. Another thing is if you just want to, if you're trying it out at the beginning, just want to use vanilla HTML, JavaScript, CSS that works with it too. Works with all the modern browsers. What are the other things that I'm missing? Who is it for? It's for developers that work on building web apps, SharePoint, web parts, Teams apps, where there's a UI that you wanted the data to come from the graph. That's where we want that's who we want our audience to be, I guess. Did I cover everything?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, should we do a quick demo of the Graph Toolkit for those that haven't seen it?
Yeah, I can do that real quick here. Let me share my screen. Pick desktop, and then just come to Visual Studio Code. Actually, I'm going to pull up my terminal. So I'm going to go to my...
I'm going to share your screen. Oh, there it is.
I'm just going to go to my development folder and try to find the correct demo. And then here it is. So as I said, you can use Microsoft Graph Toolkit in any environment that you like. I'm just going to go ahead and start with showing you guys the most basic HTML page. You can see there's, the head tag, the body tag. All you need to do is reference to the script tag. MGT loader is the one that we have out there that you can reference from your HTML page, or you can install at Microsoft/MGT via npm. And then you only need 2 lines of code to get started with the Graph Toolkit. All you need to do is select your auth provider. I don't know how many people here have already worked with the Graph, but that was one of the pain points that we've gotten from our community and customers telling us, there's a lot of different authentication flows that I have to read through and think about my business problem to pick one, and then I have to figure out all these libraries. You guys are providing different SDKs for different languages. It's really confusing. So we're trying to tackle that problem by providing you like the simplest way of adding a auth control possible. Here's how you do it. First, you select a provider. Here, I'm just going to use the most basic MSOL provider, and then you added a client ID to it. There's more on how to register your client ID with Azure Active Directory in order to enable it to work with the graph. If you are more interested in that, then you can go to aka.ms/mgtlab, which is the blog series that we released about a month ago. The second piece of the blog post series is all about how do you register a Active or Azure Active Directory and your app to work with Microsoft Graph. Elise is actually the one who wrote that. And then after that you supplied your client ID into your provider blog, all you need to do is add one of the Microsoft Graph Toolkit components. So starting from back to the problem that we had at the beginning, I'm just going to add the MGT logging component real quick in here. I can show you my project directory. There's nothing in here, only this. So now it's going to go connect with the script pack and then render these components on my screen and automatically have me connect with Microsoft Graph. I'm going to go live or 5500. Open up my browser if I can find it. Here it is. And then did I start it correctly? I'm gonna right click it and then click send to live server. Says it's on, right?
Yeah.
Localhost.
Is it HTTPS?
Do I need that?
No.
I don't need that.
No. All
Well,
right.
how about while you figure that out, let's go ahead and actually go to some other questions, and then we can come back to that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What do you think? Okay. So I'm going to send myself live. So I see there's a question here by Mike, which asks, to use Microsoft Graph Toolkit, does it have to be deployed on Azure? And the answer is no. The Microsoft Graph Toolkit is just a web component library and works with anything that you do on the web, on the web browser. So just any web app on any framework, wherever it's hosted, wherever it runs, it doesn't matter. It's not tied to any service, hosting service at all. And then there's a question by Emmanuel. Will be support for files with macros, or better to forget, or VBA? Honestly, I'm not sure what you mean by this, so maybe you can kind of fill in a bit more information on this. The Graph Toolkit is a web library, a web component library for web developers. So I'm not sure how that will tie in with VBA and macros.
I have it set up now. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, of course. Okay, let's go back.
I don't know,
let's go
something
back to
with live server. I just started a Python in the background instead, using the same port. This is all I did. I have Python installed.
Hold on, I'm sending you live right now so people can see it. Okay, there it is.
Sorry. We're all like amateur producers here. So I don't know, something was wrong with live server. Maybe I didn't configure it correctly in Visual Studio Code, but what I did instead is just start a Python server to host the HTTP page. And here you can see all I added was the MGT- login component. And because I'm already logged in with my browser, here's me in the graph demo tenant. And the next thing that you could do real quick before we switch to the next question is you can add any other components that we have. Yesterday we showed how to add agenda to your projects so that it'll show you, a calendar view. I need to restart my server so that it shows up right here. Now, because we're sending in more, MGT agenda is requesting data from graph that requires a different permission scope, and here's when you're adding that component, we're automatically adding more scope for you. So here's a user consent flow. And then now here's all my calendar events. Weird, maybe I should just consent on my. I'm using this tenant for so many different things. Sorry.
Yeah.
Back.
It's because you haven't consented before, and so it's asking you to consent to everything again now.
Yeah.
But they're using a different account.
Yeah. The other thing, if you're interested in what are all the components that we have, you could go to, yeah, it's really twitchy now, mgt.dev. So like Nicholas said, the reason was because that we're trying to use different scopes for agenda. You could also set up your scope in your code ahead of time so that it'll send all the consent all together. Here is a playground, mg.dev, super easy to remember, to explore all the components out there for the toolkit if you're interested. And then if anybody has any questions on any of the components, this is the first time that you're introduced to this, just let us know and then we'll answer from there.
Cool. Thank you, Beth. Okay, so there's another question now by Brian. Brian asks, if an existing app has auth with MSL, can you just start popping in MGT components? And I think what you're asking is if you already have authentication set up ahead of time and you don't want to use any of our MSL providers that we provide out of the box, can you use the components? And the answer is absolutely yes. In fact, we have several providers that enable the use of the toolkit in different environments. Actually, let me share my screen real quick and I'll go through a quick documentation trip here. And let's make sure we send that live.
Let's do it on it.
Okay, so for example, the best place actually to learn about the toolkit is to go to one of the best places. We have several best places, but one of them is the documentation on Microsoft Docs. And if you look at the providers, you can look at the list of all the different providers that we have here. We have the MSL provider that Beth just showed, but if you already have your own authentication with MSL or ADL or whatever the library that you're using, you can actually use a custom provider. A custom provider, essentially what it does is, actually a simple provider, it's one of the easiest way to do this. You can create a provider just by passing in a function that returns an access token. So here what you could do, you can say, okay, I already have my MSL library that's getting me the token. Here's a function that when the components want to get an access token, they can use this function to get that access token. So that way they will get that access to the graph through your authentication, and you can handle all the authenticating in, signing out, getting the tokens, and getting all the scopes and everything through there. You can also pass in things like a login and logout functions. So that way, if you want to use the login component still, when the user presses sign in, they can call in your sign in code. And the user presses sign out, they can call in your sign out code, etc. Alternative to this is you can actually extend, if using TypeScript, you can extend our iProvider class. And you can implement this iProvider class to implement your own provider and kind of handle authentication that way through whatever existing authentication method that you have currently. Okay, so moving on, hopefully that answered the question. Next question, should the Graph API itself be in highly unlikely a service down state? Does MGT provide a way for its component to gracefully handle this failure? Example, if the Graph API is down, would the rendered person card show a specific message instead of a blocked box? Maybe Shane, you wanna pick this one up?
Yeah, I could talk about this. Here, let's see if I can get myself on the screen here.
Yeah. I'm sending you live right now.
Perfect, love it. All right, so the Graph API is really a culmination of dozens of other APIs from across the company. We have lots and lots of teams across Microsoft, and they all have services and endpoints and data that they want to surface to their users. And so the point of the graph in a lot of ways is to kind of organize that. to make it easier for a developer to consume all of that data without having to connect to a variety of services, just one. So naturally, like with any REST service, the Graph API, parts of it can go down. It's real, it does happen, it's uncommon, it's not intentional, but it happens. And so in our components, we've ensured that we've built loading states and no data states for all of our components, so that if they do show up in an environment and the data is not available, they're not going to fall apart and look completely awful. They are going to reflect that there's no data for them to show. But yes, they will handle that gracefully.
Yeah, I think we can add also, if you do find one of the components or any of the components not doing what you expect them to do, please send us that feedback, whether an issue, so you can reach out directly to us on Twitter or wherever it is. We do want to hear that feedback and make sure that we can get those toolkit to do the right thing and do everything they need to do.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And to second on that we are going through some good overhaul of a lot of our components and cleaning up the insides and making sure that we're really excited for what we got going forward. So if you do notice, little patches or things in loading states or other inconsistencies, love to hear what those are so we can get those fixed up.
Perfect. Now, the next question is coming from Anonymous. That sounds so nice. Coming from Anonymous. This is a question for Elise, so maybe, Beth, can you share
Yes.
Elise's screen? Are there any big announcements in the last 2 days around Microsoft Graph specifically, or just the Graph Toolkit?
Let me select. Somebody is controlling the.
I'm sending it live, sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah. Okay, you're live, Elise.
Okay. Yes, there are a lot of announcements around Microsoft Graph the past few days. The first, or one of them, is the Places API is now GA. There's also a new To-Do API that's coming. So the Outlook Task API that's currently in beta is being replaced by a completely new API that works with Microsoft To Do. And then we also GA'd the new Graph Explorer, which is the playground for all of the Microsoft Graph APIs. And there are a bunch of other new announcements as well. But I actually did a session on what's new with Microsoft Graph, and there are a bunch of other recordings on all the new features. I think you can find it on the Microsoft 365 developer page. And then for Toolkit specifically, we GA'd the Microsoft Teams channel picker 4 months ago, so that's new. And then we are also previewing some of the things that we're planning to ship for 2.0 in a couple of months. So in the sessions, you can see a new profile card with like the presence and new user information from the profile API populated, and then we also previewed some new task things.
I can show off the profile too if that's something we're interested in.
Sure. Do you want to share your screen real quick, and let's take a look at that real quick?
Sure. All right. Share.
There it is.
Cool. All right. Hey, you can see it. All right. So this is the new person card component. It looks pretty similar to the way it did before in this state. You can see we have a presence bubble available, which is a new thing. And we've expanded these icons to show some text with them. The real magic's inside, though. Crap. Hold on.
Okay. It looks like you didn't have the permissions right.
Yeah, I have to cache the login first. Annoying.
Oh, actually, we have a fix for this. I fixed this in a separate PR.
This is an experimental branch right now.
It's just the redirect URI is not set on that page. You need to make sure you set it because it's not registered in the Azure portal. Yep.
All right, here we are again. All right, and we've got some more data this time. So as we can see in here, we've got an ability.
Sorry.
Sharing the screen.
What do you mean?
Oh, can you just make your browser like?
Oh,
You
bigger.
want me to zoom in?
Yeah.
Zoom. Lots of zoom. Okay. We have this awesome quick chat component here. You can instantly send messages to other people. And then we have kind of this breakdown. If you see here, this is an overview really. And it shows a breakdown, compact sections of each of the other sections. We have the contact details like you've seen before, but now we have new organization structure with reporting, data, email logic. I'm zoomed in really far here. You can see we have files. I don't have any files right now. Skills and communications, information about the user's profile all the way down to the birthday. And if you dive into each of these sections, you can see more expanded views. This is contact information, organization as described a second ago. This one's really fun. You can see your manager chain up the hierarchy, as well as groups of individuals that you work with regularly. And if you want to perhaps click into any of them, the card will refresh and show you the state of that person. So you can get to follow the rabbit hole down the different list of people and snoop on all your friends.
Cool. This is really cool. Okay. The next question here, it looks like Shane, you already actually answered this. So maybe I'm going to ask you while you're on screen still. Is the single page app specific or can be used, say, for example, in a Node.js app?
Yeah, so this application or this toolkit is made of web components, HTML standard web components. So in this case, they're going to work anywhere you have a web browser. If you're doing a Node.js application and doing SSR style websites, you can absolutely add components into your markup and send it down to the client. And as long as the loader, the MGT loader library is included, those components will start to come to life once they're on the page and down on the client. Because you can't really pre-hydrate the components. All the data calls are made when they're actually added to the DOM in the client. That there's not a lot of like work you can do ahead of time to massage them, but you can absolutely use them in that environment, and we encourage you to.
Cool, thank you. Okay, next question is again by Anonymous, and it looks like Anonymous is asking a lot of questions. Thank you, appreciate that, Anonymous. So there's a question: is this just a sort of a branch between existing graph MCell setup? How do scopes, etc., fit in? So what we do in the Graph Toolkit, we actually use MCell if you use the MCell provider behind the scenes. So we don't. We basically just write some of the boilerplate code that you would have to write anyway to kind of make that setup much easier. And then there might be cases where you do need to use the MCell provider, the MCell JS library yourself, like in the previous question. And those cases we also support that model as well. But the goal of the toolkit is to kind of take all these patterns that we see developers using inside of their applications, or patterns that we see that the Microsoft applications use, like things like the Office applications, for example, and kind of make that available for any developer really easily, so they don't have to write any of that common code on any of those patterns, and they fit into their application, and they work with all the M365 APIs that are enabled by the graph. The next question is from Anonymous, and I'm going to ask Elise this. Elise, what's your thoughts on best practices in using Graph beta APIs for production? Are there any SLAs for the beta APIs?
Oh, sorry.
And let's get Elise back on the screen.
Sharing the Elise.
And sending live. Yes.
Okay. So beta APIs in production, I mean, they are beta APIs, so we suggest being careful and being aware that they are beta, and like there can be changes to them. And SLAs with the beta APIs, I don't think we have anything right now, but that is something the Graph team is working on and trying to be more transparent on when something is going to move out of beta and into V1.0.
Cool, thank you, Elise. Okay, so next question by Offergal. Hi, Offergal. And I'm going to ask Beth this. How do I get a persona with presence for any user?
I think I think my answer was if you can go to mgt.dev and take a look at the mgt-person or the mgt-person card components, those are the closest two that we have to Persona. As you've seen that Shane just shared, the new upcoming person card has a lot of details for showing off informations around people in your organizations as well. And then I think the last part was about Presence API. We actually have a PR submitted for.
Question too, like, do you each have advice? So we'll start with.
Sorry. We have a PR submitted for the Presence API added onto MGT-Person and MGT-Person card. Let me find.
I'm sharing my screen right now so people can see it.
Do you have it?
Oh, the present stuff? I do not know. This is just the person component.
Oh, yeah, that's the persona. We also, yeah, can you do the hover one so that it shows?
Yeah.
So when you hover over the MGT-Person component, it'll show you the person card, which including, like I said, some of the information this user has in your organization. And then we also, there's more advanced functionalities such as adding templates into this so that you can customize the detailed information around these users as well that fits into your application needs.
Right, and it's worth mentioning that Presence is coming in the next update, which is 1.3, which should be live in the next few weeks.
I think there's an example in one of the PRs on GitHub. If you can, it just looks exactly how you would see in Outlook or Teams. We have different combinations that follows the Fluent
UI, yes.
UI. Sorry, it's confused. There's so many different names now. And that's another thing that's worth noticing, because when you're using the MGT components, you're getting the M365 experience out of the box. We're following the Microsoft guidelines on how to show the look and feel for all of the components that we have. And also we're trying to make it easier for you guys to customize the look and feel of it as well. There's a lot of custom CSS properties that you can kind of just tweak and use for your own application needs. Okay.
Cool, thank you. Okay. Next question comes again, I think, from Anonymous. And the question is, would it be great to see some examples with MGT Provider and the SPFX reusable React controls? Actually, that's a very good feedback. We do have one example on the repo right now. Actually, if I go back on the repo, so if you go to ak.ms/mgt, here, I'll zoom in. This is actually how to get to our GitHub repository. That's how you get to all of our samples that we have on there, and all of the code, all the issues, the PRs, you can see everything there. And that's all hosted on GitHub. But we do have a samples folder right there on the root. You see it right there. And then inside of that folder, there's a few samples with different frameworks, and we do have one with SPFX web part that shows how to use the Graph Toolkit components with a React app inside of SPFX. Actually, this is a TypeScript React app. And we'd love to kind of hear if there's any other samples that we can do on top of this. One thing that we kind of briefly mentioned at the live stream yesterday is we do have a new package for the toolkit called mgt-react that will make it easier to use the toolkit in React applications, specifically TypeScript React applications, because we wrap all the web components into React components and we give you the IntelliSense on top of that so you can use them. So for example, if I go to the moderator sample app, which is something we released yesterday at the live stream, we are using this in here. So for example, in the agenda, when I look at the agenda, here at the top, you'll see the MGT React library now imported. This is still in preview right now, but it allows you to use these components as React components. And you can see here where the agenda is used, and it's used as a React component. behind the scenes, this is just a web component, but we do all the magic to connect all the properties, all the events, everything for you, so you can just feel like you're writing React and not working with other frameworks or other type of entities. And the cool thing about this, it supports everything that the web components support, even templating, for example. Like we can see here, the agenda header has a template. I want to template the header for each of the events. I want to template all the events with a different React component. So you do everything in the React way with the toolkit. And I'm very excited about this. And we're hoping to release this as 1.3 together with 1.3. But today is a preview as part of the 1.3 preview. Okay. Next questions. Kapil says they love the blog post series. Thank you. I think Beth, at least everyone gets a lot of credit for that, for writing those. Anonymous asks, can you create an Excel with pre-filled data using the Graph API and Flow? Who wants to take this one? I guess I'll take it.
Awesome. Thanks.
You're very welcome. So yes, I believe you can. I'm not actually, the question is also with Flow. I don't think anybody here is very familiar with Power Automate on this team, so I'm not sure I can give you an authoritative answer on that. But if I had to guess, I mean, the Graph API does have the Excel APIs to work with any of the Excel data that's inside of a file, and you can do it programmatically. You can even run functions and everything that you would expect through the Graph API. And I don't see why you wouldn't be able to, if it doesn't already exist, create your own connector for Power Automate to be able to do that. Yeah. The question from Kapil is also, are the Graph Toolkit components open source? Beth, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure.
Sending you live.
Wait, am I?
Oops.
Sorry.
There you are.
Yes, it is. It is absolutely open source. You can go to https github.com/Microsoft Graph/Microsoft Graph Toolkit. Anyways, aka.ms/mgt is a better link that'll just redirect you to our repo. All of us are super active in our open source space, so we welcome any bugs, issues, feature requests. If you have anything that you want to see in the future, that you have use cases in the real world for us to create a new component in the toolkit, we're more than happy to accommodate you. I hope that answered the question. And then yep. I'm just gonna go down to the next question. Might be a bit off topic, but is there any examples of partner center auth and Graph Toolkit available? I have no idea.
So yeah, I'll take this one actually. So one of the best ways to kind of find all the examples that we do have is one, to go to the repo as I mentioned before, but we also have several samples into the Microsoft Graph organization on GitHub. And I think one of the closest things you'll find to a complete example of a partner authentication. I'm not really sure what you mean by partner center authentication. So maybe I'm answering this wrong. But we do have several samples. One of the samples that we released at Ignite last year is called the meeting, the meeting capture sample. This sample, for example, demonstrates how to use, among other things, the Graph Toolkit inside of an application that uses backend authentication. So it uses ASP.NET web app with a .NET MCell library for authentication, and still has a front end that using the toolkit, and it's actually hosted on Teams using the Teams SSO flow. So it's a kind of end-to-end example how to do that. And we also released a sample yesterday for meeting moderation and creating breakouts. It also shows end-to-end example how to do things with the toolkit and authentication. If you search for the meeting moderator sample, you'll be able to find that there as well. That kind of goes through that example as well. And then Ryan asks, what are the most common ways you use graph extension properties being used these days? We use it for roles, user types, etc. And wondering if there is a more standard way of assigning roles using graph. I don't know the answer to this. honestly. I'm wondering if anybody else on the team wants to pick this up.
Sorry, no, I don't know much about this either.
Okay. Well, Ron, if you want to reach us out after this or Twitter, I'm sure we can get you the answer for this. You can. I think we'll put our Twitter handles at the end so people can kind of tweet at us and kind of look at that. And then there's a question from Anonymous again. Man, Anonymous is very popular. I am completely new to this Microsoft Graph Toolkit. Where can I use it and where to start? And Shane, do you want to cover this?
Which question are you on again? I was answering another question in text.
That's okay. The question is, if you're new to Microsoft Graph Toolkit, where can you use it and where do you start?
Where can you use it and where to start? So getting started, I would definitely say, we've mentioned the link a few times, aka.ms/mgt. That'll just get you right to the GitHub repo. Or mgt.dev is going to get you right to our playground where you can play with the components, see them live with test data and interact with them there. Where is the question you're reading? I can't find it.
It's the one you answered, but
perfect.
You already answered it, so we'll just move on. Yes.
Move on.
And then Anonymous is saying nice extensibility on iProvider. Thank you, Anonymous. We really appreciate that. We'll always love to hear the feedback. And then Anonymous follows up with, is there a graph-specific connector or form power apps, not O365 user, etc.? Can one use an HTML controlling call graph function similar to what you're showing? The right side of the playground. Honestly, I'm not really sure what you mean. I'm gonna have to kind of read this question again. Can one use an HTML controlling call graph function similar to what you're showing in the right side of the playground? Maybe you're asking. So one of the components that we also have, let me share this, is the get component. And actually, Beth, do you want to talk a bit about the get component? I'll put it on the page here, and then can you just quickly kind of go over what it does?
Sure. So that was also, like I said, we listened to our community. That's also one of the requests that we got because people were asking all of your components were tied tightly with a specific graph endpoint. Is there any way that we can just make a get call? So we created an mgt.-get where you can just supply your resource, that's the endpoint for graph version of the graph, either beta or v1, and then there is the scopes that the call is needed. This will help you take care of how to talk to the graph and retrieve your data. And then what you need to do is just apply a template nested inside of it, and then get the data, refer to the data and use it in. If you see on the screen in terms of double handlebars to handle how you would template the data.
Cool. Okay. No, that's perfect. Okay, moving on. So Dan asks, is there a graph call to get the messages, post conversation, replies, attendees from an ad hoc meeting, now meeting in Teams? This function works well for events, scheduled meetings, but where can I access the data entities for non-event online meetings? So unfortunately, I don't believe there is right now, and I don't really know the answer why. This is another question that we can probably follow up with the rest of the team that owns this API and kind of get the right answer for you then. So make sure you reach out to us after this meeting. And then Anonymous asks, will there be any example apps on GitHub or elsewhere that we could pull and run to see the components in action? Yes, you saw mgt.dev, the one I'm sharing right now. This is a great example of playing around with the toolkit. And then the samples that Shane linked already in the chat. And then John C. asks, is there any way to monitor for throttling in Graph now or in the future? And can the toolkit help with handling this? Actually, yes. The toolkit uses the official Graph SDK for JavaScript underneath the hood to make all the calls. And if you actually want to look at that, if you just search for Microsoft Graph SDK for JavaScript, it'll take you directly to the GitHub. And this is the SDK that we use to make all the calls, and we actually give you access to this SDK. But this SDK automatically handles all the throttling for you. So if you do make a call to the graph and gets throttled, you get a 429, I believe. The SDK will capture that and will wait the required amount of time to make sure it doesn't actually overflow, it doesn't actually get punished, and it will make the call after the awaited time. So when you do use the SDK to make those calls, that's all handled for you automatically there, and kind of helps out. And then if you're new to this, Jean-Michael asked, I'm new to this, where does one get the client ID good you're showing? And Shane looks like already answered this in the docs, in the chat. There's also a blog post. Oh, there you go. And the blog post that Beth just posted in there as well, to go step by step on how to do that. I'm going to click on that real quick. There it is. It's just a quick blog post that goes through, okay, here's how you click, here's how you get to the Azure portal, this is how you fill out this information. It's a really, really nice blog post that kind of goes through this. And I'm just going through the questions pretty quickly because we have about 10 minutes left, and I see we still have some questions coming in. What portions are not on GitHub? As Beth just said, yes, everything is on GitHub. There's nothing that we don't do on the public. Even all of our planning is all done on GitHub. So if you go back to the toolkit, let's see, ak.ms/mgt, you can even see all of our planning that we do here. If you go to projects, you can see all the different things we're working on, and you can look at our backlog and see the different areas of things that are in the works and what we're planning to doing. And we'll love to kind of get your engagement there as well. Both Shane, Mihai is asking, both Shane and Bat are using a local HTTP server to test the MGT components. What is it? A Python-based web server? Oh, Beth, which one did you use? Did you use live server or did you use a Python one?
I have both set up. Live server has been giving me problems lately, so I've been using Python. Sorry.
No worries.
I know it's a Microsoft product.
You can use anything. I use Live Server. Live Server is just a VS Code extension where you just press a button and it just spins up a quick server for you to host an HTML page. And it's really great for testing. You can just go to the VS Code extension store and just search for Live Server.
And if you're in our code code base repo, there's a lot of scripts already set up. If you go to package.json, you can run start the project by just npm start, and there's also other things that you can test and in development as well. Let's take a look at that file.
Cool. And then we have a question from Anonymous. Where does one set the graph details such as managers, etc.? There seem to be so many places and it doesn't seem to surface in all areas in another. Insert photo node 365 and it didn't appear anywhere. Shane, do you want to cover this? Looks like you answered it.
Yeah. So the person card component I showed a few minutes ago actually does a request for manager. I listed the API in there. It's user list manager is the doc endpoint. And yeah, it's really, you can make it, you provide your ID for your user and say, hey, give me my manager, and you'll get a manager back and it will have an ID. Limitation there is that you can't really ask for all the managers. You can't ask for the org chain. You can't say what's between me and Satya kind of thing. So instead you kind of have to say, okay, who's my manager? Who's their manager? Who's their manager? And just kind of follow the chain as far as you see fit. For us in the person card, we thought it made sense to follow the whole org chain up. But that's just one use case. In a lot of cases, it doesn't make sense to pull down the entire org structure every time. Yeah.
And I also want to call out, there's a session by the Profile API team that they did for build that I recommend watching, that goes through a lot of the information on the work that they're doing. And I know they still have some work to do, but that's kind of the idea, is that actually they unify all of that work and kind of make that easier for you to kind of get that done. Okay, moving on. John C. asks, and this is a question for Elise, so maybe we can share the screen for Elise.
Yes.
When it comes to graph throttling, at what scope does this take effect? Is it the current session, the user, the tenant, the app? What is it? I'm going to send Elise live. And you're live, Elise.
I'm actually not very familiar with throttling, so Nicola might be better to answer this.
Well, that's okay. So yeah, I'll pick this up then. So yes, throttling actually, as far as I understand it, it's handled by the workload. So a specific workload handles throttling differently. We do have documentation on the throttling that kind of talks about some different workloads. So if you go on the docs.microsoft.com for the graph or graph.microsoft.com, there's a page just on throttling that talks about some of the limits on specific workloads and how to kind of handle that in your code. And then Ash asks, is there any way to use Graph to access teams.admin.microsoft, for example, assigning teams phone numbers to users? Honestly, I'm not sure. Again, this is a question you can probably answer and get you the right answer from the right team on using the own the Teams APIs and see if there's a way that we can get that done for you. And then Alex G, and it's a question for Beth. Do you have more examples of using Toolkit with Python, Beth?
You can use any backend. I don't have an example with Python, but what I was doing was just setting up a live server with Python. So I can send you the command. It's just a, hold on. Here. It depends on the Python version as well. I think version 2 and version 3 have different commands. We can move on. Here, I'll send you this. Wait, I sent it to the wrong question. Here it is.
Perfect.
So the next question is,
yeah.
Oh, this is a popular one, got 3 upvotes. Are Graph Toolkit components for Blazor coming, or is it always going to be React? I think you can use any wrapper. I don't know. I actually don't know exactly how Blazor works these days anymore. I feel like it changed a lot. But we are like web component itself is very vanilla HTML. If you're familiar with the W3C standard, you're basically just using HTML to define a new component in your DOM. And there's like 3 pillars around it. I'm not going to go into details with it, but any web technology should work with it just fine.
Right, and we don't really have anything done with Blazor, but if somebody wants to kind of help us out and maybe take a look at what it would take to get the components to work really nicely with Blazor, we're more than happy to kind of have that discussion and take in that PR if we need to.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yep. And then
could it be used with Azure AD B2C tenant and authenticate policy endpoints, or is it limited to authentication against full Azure AD? I haven't thought about this. Nicola probably know more. My guess is it can work with all the tenants. You just need to supply the right parameters for tenant IDs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So the toolkit, if you don't want to use like the built-in providers, you can use your own authentication, and it will work with whatever authentication you have, as long as you can give us an access token to call the graph. That's all it is. So we make it really easy. If you do see any limitation in that, do talk to us. Or if you see an opportunity to create a provider that's specific to this scenario, also do talk to us and see if we can add that to the toolkit.
I'm gonna circle back to the aka.ms/mgt-lep for like MGT LAP for the block series. There is one, I think number 7 specifically talks about providers and how to initiate your own iProvider if you already have a authentication methods hooked up in your application. So you can go from there. We also, starting June 1st, we're gonna start season 2 of the block series. A lot of it is around providers. We're going to go into details and showing you samples to use SharePoint provider, Teams provider, MSOP provider, and also 2 samples on React and Angular. So if you have any questions that those could help answer, please check it out, or just reach out to us via GitHub as well.
Perfect. And then Ted is asking, is there an Angular module implementation for Graph, specifically for Microsoft Graph SDK JavaScript?
I don't think so. I feel like we gotta have some Angular samples out there though, both for the SDK and for MGT. So if you go to our repo in the examples folder, There is an Angular sample set up for to use with the Graph Toolkit, but if you go to github.com/Microsoft Graph and then search for Angular, they will show you probably all the things Angular related that's using Graph.
Cool. And this is the final question. I think we have about 3 minutes left, so we're gonna close it out. Is it fair to say that Teams is built with Microsoft Graph Toolkit? Are we is Teams dogfooding Microsoft Graph Toolkit?
Am I taking this?
I can take it.
I feel like I'm gonna say something wrong.
So the answer is no. Or actually, we don't know. Teams is built with various different technologies, and I don't think we've talked about how Teams is built. So I'm not sure. There's nothing we can announce on how the architecture of Teams application is built. But we are working with many internal teams in Microsoft to dogfood the Graph Toolkit and to make it better. And that's how a lot of the features actually come in from requests that we get from internal teams of stuff they want to see in the Graph Toolkit and make it and use it inside of application side of Microsoft for dogfooding purposes. And hopefully that answers that question.
I would say
yes, Shane.
We do see a ton of success with our components in Teams tabs or other team integrations from third-party developers. Our components work really well in that environment because we have a Teams provider available, can automatically detect the signed-in user. And so you can do a lot of power in there. If you're working with Teams, I highly recommend checking out the toolkit.
Yeah, we actually have a couple partners, right, that's building applications like in the education space. If you followed us along or build process or journey along, there's a couple partners were shown in the I think M365 keynote, and also Satya's keynote has Vegas as well. So there are people out there like giving us feedback very actively on how we would make it better for you guys. So we would definitely love to hear more about it as well.
Perfect. Okay, so we have about 1 minute left. Let's close it out. So I just put our names and Twitter handles on the screen. So if you do have any questions that we didn't answer or you didn't ask and you want to ask us, the best way to do it is on Twitter. Just add us, and then we'll try our best to find the right people to answer them if we don't know the answers. And that's it. Right, Beth, do you want to close it out?
I got the honor. That's awesome.
Yes.
We appreciate your time with us. So here's a link for giving us feedback on like my build evals. I don't know. I just copied and pasted it. And then I don't know how many more sessions there are after this, but do check us out at mybuild.microsoft.com. For more information on MGT, go to aka.ms/MGT or graph.microsoft.com. There are other links for Microsoft Graph Toolkit. If you want, like Nicola said, just find us on Twitter or send us feedback on GitHub, wherever. I feel like we're everywhere these days. It's hard to keep up with social network and all the technologies. So many notifications, but I really enjoyed the session. Hope this worked well for everybody else as well.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and I hope to see you online. And let us know if any questions.
I wish there's a screen that we can show all of our faces all together, but there is not.
Well, we can show our pictures. There we go. We can end on this. Bye, everybody. Imagine
Bye,
us waving at
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Happy coding.